All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bassam Haddad. I am hosting this event, which is part of the series on Gaza in Context, collaborative project, and is, of course, organized and sponsored by the MESA Global Academy, um, that has been doing remarkable work for so many years. We are very proud to have co-sponsored and co-organized a number of events with the Global Academy, including last week's event that addressed or hosted Gaza scholars or scholars from Gaza, talking about scholasticide. You can find all of the material, including this recording, if you would like to continue watching it later or share with anybody to watch it at any point at palestineincontext.org. All of the material that we have been broadcasting since last October is on palestineincontext.org, including the teaching module that curates material for the classroom and for researchers, journalists, and beyond. I am very excited today to have two remarkable scholars with us, Dr. Begüm Burak and Dr. Nijmeh Ali, whom I'll introduce in just a moment. At this point, I'd like to share also that we will be broadcasting tomorrow at 2 p.m. A part of the series "What Have We Learned" with Tarek Bakoni, and we will be broadcasting after that next week a very important conversation, an intellectual journey with Ras Sigal on leaving Zionism, embracing humanism, the effort to redefine or to combat the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which has wreaked havoc at universities and beyond because of the loose interpretations that can be used to silence dissent or free speech or censor free speech. I am at this point very happy to say hello to our guests, Dr. Begüm and Dr. Nijmeh. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for
Good,
having
thank
us.
you.
Very, very excited to have you both. I know that Nijmeh is in France and Begüm is in Turkey, which we now have to say Turkey, right, Begüm? We can't say Turkey anymore.
Yeah. No, you can use both.
There's no penalty?
No.
All right, excellent. Let me first say that we will start with Begüm, who will speak for about 12 minutes or so, and then Nijmeh will proceed. I'll introduce Begüm to you right now. Dr. Begüm Burak is a researcher with a PhD in political science and international relations. Her expertise spans democracy, human rights, civil liberties, and the political landscape of Turkey. She is known for her research on freedom of expression, authoritarian regimes, and the impact of technology on higher education and elections. Dr. Begüm is currently involved in multiple research initiatives, including her role as a fellow at MESA Global Academy. Her work has covered a wide range of topics, including AI's impact on education and politics, citizen journalism, and the criminalization of dissent through legal frameworks in Turkey. I will introduce Nijmeh before she speaks. So, Begüm, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I guess there's no issues with the voice or everything is fine. No echoes, nothing. Okay,
Perfect.
thanks again for the opportunity. Bassam, I'm honored to be with you here today. So I will try to address what citizen journalism, what kind of role citizen journalism play in Turkey as a tool of resistance. So firstly, I want to define what citizen journalism is. Then I will proceed by exploring how it can be used, as a tool for challenging limitations and biases of traditional media in Turkey. So we can define citizen journalism as a way of the dissemination and analysis of news and information by the general public, by ordinary citizens, especially by means of the internet. Here in citizen journalism practices, the professional journalists do not play a role, but it's important to say that the media content presented to the public does not depend on official sources or institutions, but rather is produced and reproduced individually and then passed through a non-linear process. Citizen journalism in Turkey has emerged as a powerful tool in recent years, especially after the the widespread usage of internet all around the world, also in Turkey. And we can say that it has become a vital form of resistance, challenging the often state-controlled mainstream media narratives. And also, another important point to emphasize is the grassroots nature of citizen journalism, the bottom up process of producing the news and sharing it with the wider audience to document and disseminate alternative perspectives on political and social issues, amplify the voices of the marginalized groups like Kurdish people in Turkey or LGBTQ plus communities. And such practices can foster a more inclusive public discourse. And there are a number of citizen journalism platforms in Turkey, but I will not go into detail about this. I will briefly talk about how citizen journalism can challenge state-controlled narratives and can function as a space for resistance. We know that in Turkey, mainstream media is increasingly dominated by state aligned entities, limiting the range of perspectives and critical voices available to the public. And in response, citizen journalism platforms have emerged as vital spaces for resistance. They offer voice to marginalized groups. It also fosters democratic discourse by focusing on underreported stories and amplifying diverse voices. Citizen journalism practices can contribute to a broader public understanding of Turkey's complex social and political landscape, and it also promotes a more inclusive and democratic media landscape. So, how does citizen journalism contribute to the fostering of democratic discourse? We can summarize it in three ways. Firstly, amplifying minority voices. Secondly, fostering solidarity by giving a platform to the underrepresented voices. Since journalism fosters a sense of solidarity and shared resistance among those who are often left out of mainstream media discourse. Also, it can challenge exclusion. The rise of citizen journalism in Turkey represents a powerful challenge to the exclusion of marginalized communities from the public sphere. So there are some challenges and risks that citizen journalists face in Turkey today. We can summarize them under three headlines. One of them is funding challenges. Maintaining the financial sustainability of citizen journalism is an ongoing challenge, not only for Turkey but also for other countries. Also, censorship can be a problem because sometimes citizen journalists, of course, like the other professional journalists, they have to exercise self-censorship because of the potential harassment they can face, or because of the potential legal actions. And credibility and building trust is another issue. These citizen journalism platforms must continue to work to establish their credibility and trust with the public as they compete with the perceived authority of traditional media outlets. By the way, how many minutes do I have? I think I have 5 minutes or so.
Yes, you can. You can go over if you need to, because we
Okay,
only have
I'm
two
gonna
speakers. You're good.
thank you. I'm going to wrap up in 5 minutes, or yes. The impact of citizen journalism. We can say that citizen journalism has a not very huge, but has a considerable degree of impact on raising awareness, fostering civic engagement, and advocating for change. And these three key functions of citizen journalism also tells us how it can be used as a space for resistance. Um, it empowers marginalized communities, as I mentioned earlier. Uh, so these are the points that I want to talk about the citizen journalism practices in Turkey, and also we can, uh, um, draw some lessons from the Turkish context, and these are also these are valid for the other contexts as well, because of the nature of how citizen journalism is performed all around the world. Uh, and Also, I want to share a specific example before finishing my presentation. Like 11 years ago, the Gezi Park movement occurred in Turkey, and it attracted a wide range of attention from both the global media and of course the Turkish media. And during the Gezi Park protests in 2013, the citizen journalists have used social media, as particularly the then Twitter, now we call it X, to document human rights abuses such as police crackdowns and restrictions on freedom of expression. uh, I can finally say that platforms like Twitter and Instagram and other social media platforms, including YouTube, which we are on live at the moment, have allowed citizen journalists to reach a wide audience and bring transparency to government actions. This grassroots reporting not only provides unfiltered accounts of events, but also influences public opinion by offering diverse perspectives that can challenge state controlled narratives. These are my final words. Thanks again for the opportunity, and I'm excited about hearing your up questions.
Thank you very much, Begum. I am glad to have heard this presentation. I look forward to have some questions. I neglected to share that the title of Begum's uh, presentation is "Citizen Journalism," as she said, "Citizen Journalism in Turkey as a Form of Resistance." Thank you again, Begum. Nijmeh Ali is going to speak on Palestinians in Israel at the time of genocide, facing political persecution and reassessing their resistance. I'll be introducing Nijmeh before she presents. Dr. Nijmeh Ali is a Palestinian academic specializing in political science with a particular focus on resistance movements and activism among Palestinians, especially in Israel. Her extensive publications cover a wide range of topics, including Palestinian political thought, resistance, and social movements, and the role of Palestinian citizens in Israel in the broader struggle for justice and self determination. Dr. Ali, who holds a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of Otago National Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, is also a fellow at the Middle East Studies Association, MESA. In addition to her academic work, she provides policy analysis and political consultancy on Middle East affairs, applying her scholarly insight to real world issues. Nijmeh, it's also a pleasure to have you with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Bassam, for the introduction and for organizing this discussion. But also thank you, Begum, for your talk, and it was very interesting. So, as you can tell from my title, my talk presents the case of the Palestinians in Israel at a time of genocide, because I think that as we witness the genocide in Gaza, it's essential to examine what might be seen as the hidden front of the Palestinian cause. Which is in this case the Palestinians in Israel. And I think that it's important because it opens a window for examining the internal changes and challenges in Israel, and might provide us with a political anticipation regarding the future. So in this short presentation, I would discuss the challenges and the risks Palestinians in Israel are facing, arguing that these challenges are part of a broader genocidal project targeting all Palestinians, including those in Israel. So since the escalation in Gaza, which has reached levels widely recognized as genocidal, Palestinians in Israel, who make 20.8% of Israeli population, have faced a swift and harsh crackdown. This is not just about emergency measures during a time of war. It's a calculated, systematic attack on the rights, freedoms, and existence of Palestinians in Israel under the pretext of national security. So from the first day of the war in Gaza, Israel sent a direct, clear, and assertive message to Palestinians in Israel, declaring zero tolerance for Palestinian solidarity with Gaza. On October 17, 2023, Chief of Police Yaakov Shabtai declared in widely circulated video published in social media platforms that any expression of sympathy with Gaza would be met with threats of deportation and arrest. So to put context to this, in Shabtai's words, and I quote, "We are in a state of war. From our perspective, the instructions are clear. Zero tolerance for any event, not from the media, not from doctors or singers. There is no approval for holding demonstration. I have also given instruction on how to employ economic measures against criminals, which means economic sanctions. We act against anyone caught in this way, just as we do against criminals." And this is like the last sentence catch my eyes and my mind. Anyone who wants to sympathize with Gaza, I will put them on buses heading there right now. So this is definitely a clear threat of economic sanctions and punishment, but more than this, it's a direct threat of population transfer, which is in the Palestinian experience, context, and terminology is a threat of ethnic cleansing directed at Palestinian citizens who dare to criticize the war in Gaza or show empathy toward Palestinian people, whether they are children, women, elderly, no matter what. So Shabtai works along with other using dehumanization terminology, we know the names, set the tone of persecution in the public sphere in Israel. So when I speak to family and friends, they say that, and it's like a grounded knowledge because I speak directly to people. So they say that the feeling is that every Israeli citizen is a policeman and every Arab or Palestinian citizen is under investigation. So in other words, the genocide in Gaza is used to reshape suppression policies toward Palestinians in Israel. And this is done by applying two central policies. The first one is by silencing opposition and criminalizing Palestinian voices. And the second policy is increasing police repression and control. So if I want to speak about the first policy, which is silencing and criminalizing Palestinian voices, so there is few techniques used to impose this policy. The first one is framing opposition as terrorism. So Israeli security agencies, along with Israeli media and political institutions, have framed any critique of genocide in Gaza as equivalent to terrorism and support of Hamas, criminalizing and positioning Palestinians in Israel as internal enemies. Another technique used for silencing opposition and Palestinian voices is applying what can be called as targeted arrests, which means like targeting influential social media figures, mosque preachers, artists, journalists, and even political leaders are being detained. The idea is targeting people with prestigious status to inflame the atmosphere of persecution and intimidation. So the last obvious tactics in this, and it's very also important, used by silencing Palestinian voices, is reflected on workplace punishment. And we are witnessing a lot of incidents of Palestinian professors, teachers, and healthcare workers have been dismissed from their jobs based on social media posts expressing solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza, or simply for posting religious content and sometimes a poetry. So this policy of silencing and criminalizing, it's coming together, aims to suppress any public criticism to war and create a chilling effect within the Palestinian community itself, discouraging individuals from expressing their opinion, and which is lead to self-censorship, or participating in any collective action, which will lead to by the end of the day, it will it will be very hard to bring people to a collective actions when the situation is like this. So I'd like to emphasize that the Israeli police released most of this arrested after being questioned, but under restrictive conditions, of course. Despite that, the Israeli media and Ben Gvir office didn't miss any opportunity to publish and to celebrate their catch, which means this can be understood as a process of collective criminalization of Palestinians in Israel, which will lead and is leading to, I call it normalizing with collective punishment. So the second policy in reshaping the state and public attitude toward Palestinians, Israel is increasing police repression and control. So we spoke about the first is criminalizing and voices of Palestinians, and then the second one is increasing police repression and control. So the Israeli National Security Minister, known as Itamar Ben Gvir, has seized the moment to enforce measures using the current war and the state of emergency to implement his policies by increasing police repression and control. For doing this, Ben Gvir has applied some steps that they are already active. The first is expanding police authority or powers, which means that Israeli authorities have adjusted legal guidelines to empower police, enabling them to open investigation into incitements without prior authorization. And then the second step is arming civilian units with 10,000 machine guns to form what he called protection units, which is a dangerous escalation in the militarization of Israeli society. It's basically creating armed militia-style group, mainly directed against Palestinian citizens. Another step for increasing police repression and control is shutting down protests and demonstration. Police refuse to give permits for Palestinians for demonstration and for gathering. So the first mini demonstration was in Nazareth when the Arab High Committee decided on it. All participants, mostly political leaders, were arrested and released after a few hours. The most important thing is the message that the Israeli police wanted to convey by doing this act. So the message was, if your political leadership were arrested, imagine what would happen to ordinary individuals. So what does it mean on the ground when every protest, every gathering, every social media post that questions the state's actions is met with repression? So the data that we gathered, like Palestinians in Israel, they started to gather data. They gathered shows that from October to December 2023, there was been 221 Palestinians were arrested, including those detained, charged, or held in custody without formal charges. 109 Palestinian citizens were fired from their jobs. 108 students faced disciplinary actions in their universities. 29 incidents of journalists being attacked were recorded, and 17 other attacks on citizens occurred. This data is only for 2 months. Unfortunately, I couldn't find available data for 2024. So this is one of the gaps today. However, these figures only scratch the surface, as many Palestinians fear reporting these incidents due to intimidation or as a result of a lack of trust that something might change or help them. So, however, convincing Palestinians in Israel today to speak is another serious battle. So I want to speak now about the Palestinian response to the situation, to this atmosphere. So in the face of these measures of silencing, criminalization, surveillance, and punishment, Palestinians in Israel found themselves in a juncture where they must re-examine their strategies for protest or activism, since the ones that have been used historically are banned and criminalized. So when I speak about the historical methods that Palestinians in Israel usually use, they are like petitions, general strikes, speaking and writing in media, demonstrations. So this is the known methods of protest that they used to use, but today it's not even allowed. So and basically these methods like have the nature of deterrence. But today, for now, from my observation, the nature of Palestinian activism in Israel is shifting to a protective nature. So they are doing documenting, following up, and providing legal support in this circumstances. In the front of supporting Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, which was usually done by three methods: advocacy, by bringing the Palestinian voice to public debate in Israel, providing humanitarian aid and economic support. Israel blocked all these paths, and Palestinians in Israel found themselves with no tools to practice their historical role or to practice their support. This led to many frustration, accusing the political leadership of being silent when they were supposed to raise their voices. In contrast, there is another voice that view this silence as survival mechanism, particularly in these times. This by itself returned Palestinians in Israel to the first square of their activism directly after the Nakba in 1948, which was called the Battle of Sumud and Baqa, meaning the battle of steadfastness and surviving the Nakba and surviving the military regime that Israel imposed directly on the remaining Palestinians until 1966, when the main goal was to avoid becoming refugees and to rebuild the Palestinian society. Yet, despite these restrictions and the passive survival mode, there is kind of a light on this situation. Few campaigns were organized collectively to provide humanitarian aid, at least two for Gaza. And with the blocking of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, campaigns are directed to the West Bank, especially to Jenin, to Tulkarem, to refugee camps in these places when we witness a lot of attacks on them also during this genocide period. So if I wanted to conclude, the repression of the Palestinian citizens in Israel must be seen as part of the bigger Palestinian struggle resisting their erasure, which is the nature of settler colonial project. The systematic attempts to erase Palestinian presence, existence, identity, and political agency signal a deep-seated intent within the state to silence Palestinians forever. And this is why I think it's part of a genocidal project. So while I'm speaking now, there are two bills on the Knesset, on the table of the Knesset for discussion before deciding on voting on them. The first is related to deporting family members of those who are involved according to the Israeli law of terrorist actions with terrorist action. This law is kind of a collective punishment targeting Palestinians in Israel and Palestinians in Jerusalem. A second bill also related to banning participation in the election of individuals and political parties who does not accept the definition of Israel as Jewish and democratic states or back armed resistance. So as a scholar and activist, I think that we must convert this violation, that happened on the Palestinians in Israel, and understand that it's part and wrap it as part of the future of the Palestinian cause as a whole. So by this, I will finish my talk, and then I'm waiting also for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nijmeh and Dr. Begüm. I have quite a few questions. I would like to also ask our audience if they have any questions to share with us. Their questions on on our YouTube channel. Just make sure you write question before you actually pose the question. Let me start with Begüm, but before I start, both Begüm and Nijmeh, would you like to say anything about what you heard from your colleague, or should we just go into questions? Do you have any comments or anything to share? Any points of connection or reinforcement that you'd like to make? Or we can do this part of the comment. We can go ahead.
Maybe I can just add something, that the topic of Begüm is another way to understand how resistance can be implemented in case when you have a very controlled and centralized media. And then and I think that we are witnessing the case of the role of citizens and being a journalist by bringing very marginalized knowledge and marginalized knowledge. It's not marginalized knowledge, but it's the media won't stream it on TV or on their news. So this is very important to the Palestinian case, because I think that we've seen the role of the alternative media, the alternative journalism that we are speaking about. So this is very connected to what's going on actually on the Palestinian side. But at the same time, there is another face to this, because there's a lot in cases with self-censorship. It becomes a tool for criminalizing these people who are speaking up, who are writing, who are posting. So yeah, I can see the link.
Absolutely. Begüm, do you have any comments, or should we go to your questions?
I want to thank Nijmeh for her comments. I agree with her, and also I want to thank her for the presentation she's just made. This topic is really important. Also, it's a really important humanitarian issue, human rights issue. So thanks for thanks for putting it under consideration today, Nijmeh.
Thank you very much to both of you. Let me start with a question for Begüm. Begüm, in what ways has citizen journalism in Turkey challenged what can be called traditional media coverage and influenced public opinion, especially on government policies?
In fact, I'm not very optimistic about this question, because yes, citizen journalism has emerged as a powerful tool in challenging mainstream media that has been dominated by the state funding, or by the institutions that are close to the government. But unfortunately, in Turkey, citizen journalism practices and citizen journalists are not very strong to challenge traditional media coverage. I think this has a number of reasons. First of all, in Turkey, people consume social media very much. We know that many people have Instagram or Facebook, but they mostly use it for, not for following the updates or world news or the ongoing developments in the country, but they mostly follow, I think, the celebrities and some other topics maybe. So citizen journalism in Turkey, I think, has not reached to the expected levels, which can play a role in acting as a counter discourse, counter discourse. But also during the Gezi events, Gezi Park moment, we saw that the citizen journalism has played a vital role in documenting human rights abuses, such as police crackdowns and restrictions on freedom of expression. Uh, Generally speaking, citizen journalism can provide unfiltered accounts of events, and also it can influence public opinion by offering diverse perspectives, and this can ultimately challenge state-controlled narratives. But as I said earlier, the audience is not has not the level of awareness that can let citizen journalists play a counter role for challenging state-controlled media. Also, in terms of funding, this is also another concern. Despite despite providing a more participatory form of media, citizen journalism in Turkey lacks sufficient funding, I think, because due to its critical nature and due to its opposing views most of the time, because it covers the marginalized groups like minorities or other marginalized groups, and so the funding can be a problem, especially in the countries like Turkey, in an authoritarian country. Most of the time, the big media bosses or the other, big corporations, they stand side by side by the government due to some concerns about their taxing or some other concerns. So mostly such grassroots movements, platforms do not have the enough financial and also material resources, maybe like the technical resources, because generally the ordinary citizens perform this kind of journalism activity, and sometimes due to the fear of legal actions or other legal pressure, they exercise self censorship, and such censorship also leads to the erosion of the power of citizen journalism practices, and ultimately, unfortunately, the mainstream media still is a powerful actor in Turkey in shaping public opinion. But I'm not very pessimistic, but I'm not also very optimistic either. So this is my answer to your question. Thanks for asking this question.
Thank you, Begüm. I actually have some follow-up questions, but let me get to Nijmeh first, and we will continue the conversation with Begüm. And again, if anyone in the audience would like to ask Dr. Begüm and Dr. Nijmeh any questions, please just write question on the YouTube feed and just pose the question. Nijmeh, it's a very critical topic that you are addressing today, and we have had conversations with people inside Palestine 48, and it's really unfathomable the level of censorship and danger that people live under. They could just have one tweet or one Facebook message, or they could even like something and get in trouble. How might Palestinians in Israel effectively resist such ongoing oppression and ensure their long-term, as part of other even more serious matters, and ensure their long-term political and social survival, or survival in general?
Yeah, I agree with you. The situation is something that, I left Haifa and Jerusalem 10 years ago, and then and since then the situation is going worse and worse. It's not going in a good way or in a good direction. So this is one of the questions that I keep asking myself: what should we do? And I think that we have in this time, it's very important to learn from our history and to learn from to look back to our history and to say, okay, we survived the Nakba, which is a huge, it's like, a huge issue. It's our catastrophe as Palestinians, and we survived the Nakba, and we need to learn from, how we managed to do it in terms of reorganizing our community, our people, and speaking to people, and going to this level of building connections and on the grassroots level. Because what's going today is Israel is trying to dismantle this Palestinian solidarity, this collective solidarity within the Palestinians in Israel, to keep targeting everyone, even, as I said, the prestigious people, like people with prestigious status. We speak about people with, with good job. We speak about politicians. We speak about public figures, and then to say that even those people, we can reach them. So the idea is to return back and to learn from our history how to do it. So we have how to rebuild this grassroots trust and this grassroots solidarity. And I think that we need to in the level of like, to go to the strengthening civil society organization, creating spaces for Palestinian voices together, and to strategize. And when I say this, I speak about popular meetings, because today, if you want to do a conference inside Israel, you need dealing with these topics. It's not also easy. You need to take permissions in some places, because under the pretext of national security and the situation of the war. But I think, as I said from the beginning, we must learn from how to reorganize ourselves in the grassroots level. It could be, like, as I said, civil society organization, creating spaces for Palestinians, forming network and for support, and then just rebuild Palestinian student committees, for example. Now there's the only Palestinian, or the Arab, they call it the Arab committee, the Arab student committee, that works effectively. It's in one university. And we 10 years ago, the case wasn't like this. So I think that we should, as Palestinians in Israel, reorganize ourselves internally in order to be able to face a lot of things in the future. And we have a good example that should help us in doing this.
Thank you, Nijmeh. I also have other questions, and we'll get to them. But let me go back to Begüm. Can citizen journalism in Turkey? It's gonna take a while to say Turkey, because in Arabic we say Turkiya, at least in Lebanese dialect, and then Turkey in English, and Turkey now. It's getting complicated. But can citizen journalism in Turkey help foster peace in the Palestine-Israel conflict, especially given Western media's usually biased perspective? I mean, more than biased perspective in favor of Israel. So what are your thoughts on the potential effectiveness of citizen journalism?
So my thoughts, actually, I am not sure how I can answer the Turkish context, but I can answer in a broader context. I don't think the citizen journalism efforts in Turkey are efficient enough to shape a global humanitarian issue, a global problem like the Palestinian conflict. But I can say that the local journalists living in both sides can play a role, maybe, to decrease the suffering of both parties, especially, of course, the Palestinians, I must say. Citizen journalism has a significant potential to contribute to peace in the Palestinian-Israel conflict by offering alternative narratives that challenge biased perspectives often seen in Western media. As I also mentioned in my presentation, citizen journalism refers to independent reporting. It has an unfiltered nature, and also it has a bottom-up production process. It's mostly provides stories unfiltered directly from the ground, and this is really important in representing the regions of the world that have been impacted by war, as seen in the Gaza conflict. Citizen journalists can help create a more nuanced understanding of the conflict, and this can reduce polarization and build empathy across communities. As I said, I don't think that Turkish citizen journalism actors can play a role. Mostly they are partly efficient in the country, but in terms of abroad, I cannot give a positive answer to that. But I can say that Palestinian journalists and activists who use platforms like X and Instagram to document the impact of Israeli military actions, housing, evictions, and day-to-day realities under occupation can contribute to partly, reduce polarization or contribute to peace. I also finally, before ending the wrapping up my answer, I want to mention a Canadian Palestinian citizen journalist named Mansour Schumann. I just made a quick research about the citizen journalist from Palestine. Mansour Schumann holds an engineering degree from Queen's University and an MBA from the University of Calgary, and he is an Canadian Palestinian supply chain management consultant in Gaza. But when the Hamas-Israel war broke out last year, Schumann found himself in the unique position of documenting what was happening to Palestinians on the ground. As a citizen journalist, his social media posts have reached millions of English speakers around the world. He has also aided humanitarian efforts in the region. So finally, I can say that the online visibility of this conflict is really important. The more online presence such humanitarian problems gain, the more humanitarian aid they can also get from all over the world. And through this transparent and from the ground nature of citizen journalism, I can say that Palestinians and also Israeli citizen journalists can play a role in minimizing the effects of the war, or in not minimizing the effects of the war, but in making the war-torn spaces more visible to the wider audience, to increase awareness and to increase awareness for raising humanitarian fundings. So this is what I can say for your question. Thanks.
Thank you, Begüm. I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes.
Nijmeh, I have lots. I know a little bit more about Palestine, and I have a lot more questions. But I'll about what has been said and so on. But I would like to go back to my original question, Nijmeh, or second question, which is, what are the potential consequences of the policies enacted by the Israeli government to repress Palestinian citizens in Israel? And you could address any of those policies, considering that they've existed for decades and now there's even more. And we are seeing just yesterday, if I recall, yesterday there was a motion or a discussion about a motion which I think has been approved at several levels but not completely promulgated yet. A motion about punishing families of people in the West Bank who might engage in operations against Israel. So the punishment includes not just home demolitions, which is unfortunately normalized in the West Bank by Israel, but also kicking them out and sending them to Gaza, which is very interesting that this is punishment. This is basically an admission of genocide. Like, basically they're sending them to the site of genocide. In all cases, what are some of the consequences of these policies, old and new?
As you said, Bassam, it's just like people think that it's new. These policies are not new, but today, like, they are normal. There is kind of acceptance and public opinion that it's ready to these policies, to accept these policies. And then we have, like, a huge media. We are calling, in Arabic, we use the word mujannad. Everything is like, everything is serving the war. The war machine. So they are part of the war machine. And actually, I'm not very optimistic in this case, because if these policies will be normalized, it means that we are in a slippery road toward fascism, if I may call it like this. And no one wants to live under, a fascist regime. So I think that it's very important to understand that these policies, it's not just policies during a wartime. The idea of Ben Gvir office and the people around him is to make these policies permanent in order to continue with the plan of what, like, I call it as genocidal project, because, like, nothing is comparable to what's going on in Gaza, but it's going in Gaza. There's, like, there is for Smotrich, there is a plan what to do. There is like, starting with Gaza, the West Bank, and this will reach us, the Palestinians in Israel. So I think that I'm not very optimistic in this front. If the situation will stay and continue like this, it's kind of a signs for what will happen in the future. So it will affect our existence as Palestinians, our physical existence in Palestine, which is something that for Palestinians is in Israel, it's like, the motto of their existence, that we need, like, the battle of their steadfastness is to exist physically in Palestine, and to keep the Palestinian identity in terms of cultures, in terms of like all these kind of things. But then, and I think that it will be in stages. So it will maybe start, and we witness, like, all this, like you call it, the unit that the civil unit that Ben Gvir is weaponing and creating. So, and then the control of Ben Gvir on the police. So this will increase definitely the militarization and violence inside Israel, and the first victims of it will be the Palestinians in Israel. So I'm not very optimistic in this stage, because I think that we've been for years warning, like, and it's a red flag for us, that we should also understand that this won't end with what I'm trying to say, that the situation of the Palestinians in Israel won't stop, like, by the end of the war or by ceasefire, because it's a continuing battle inside Israel. This is what I have to say for this question. But we are in a slippery road. It's there.
Absolutely. Begüm, do you have any comments on points of intersection between what Nijmeh has been saying and the research that you have been doing, before we get to maybe looking at the future? Do you have any comments on what Nijmeh has been sharing, including the various policies inside Israel?
I agree with what Nijmeh has just told. I don't have much more to say. Thanks for explaining it in details, Nijmeh.
Absolutely. Nijmi, feel free also to comment on anything that you'd like to comment in terms of points of intersection. We have, the title is Trajectories of Resistance, and we talk about resistance in broad terms, but there are very different forms of resistance, and there's also very different directions of resistance. There's resistance against an immediate repressor. There's a resistance against the overarching repressor, and that has caused a lot of debates, sometimes poisonous debates, including during the uprisings when people were very rightly talking about resisting local dictatorship, but then there were others that were cognizant of this, but were also trying to resist the larger, broader, bigger forces globally that also are considered culprits, and that creates problems sometimes. How do you both reconcile these different levels of resistance? We had a project that's ongoing, but frankly it was interrupted by the events and consequences of not consequences, the events of October 7th and Israel's response and continuation of its policies in a much more intense way. And that project was titled Navigating Anti-Authoritarianism and Anti-Imperialism. Anti-authoritarianism, local authoritarianism, and anti-imperialism. basically resisting or trying to oppose the broader global forces. How do you reconcile this in your own work, in your own uh, topics, geography? For instance, a lot of people are, I mean, more than a lot, are extremely critical of the PA for its policies. That one can to no end speak to them. At the same time, that there is something beyond the PA, whether it's Israel, whether it's the U.S. support for Israel, and so on and so forth. So in that case, in Nijmeh, how do you navigate this resistance between the two? Same thing for Begüm, for local, national, and more international levels. So I'll start with Nijmeh.
It's very it's a question with different layers, but I'm gonna say that usually when there is resistance, when there is oppression, there will be always resistance. And this is what, this is one of the heart, the corners of the resistance studies and resistance movement. So there is oppression, resistance will stay. But the question is, and maybe it will ask, maybe it will be an answer to your question. The question is, what type of oppression is employed and is applied to these people, and then accordingly the type of resistance will be. So for example, I'm going to give an example, maybe it's it will be clearer, more clear. So for example, when I live in Haifa, if I live in Haifa, I don't open my door and I find a tank in front of my house. So my level of resistance won't be the same as someone lives in the West Bank and someone who lives in Gaza. It's different. It's different according to the oppression that is exercised on these groups. So it's contextualized. It's not something that it's I can tell you one response for one one response or one form of resistance. And this is what Palestinians did, actually. Palestinians used different forms of resistance. They started with, but in the beginning, before the PLO was established, when the Palestinians started to organize themselves in order to negotiate the British, in order, to know what's going on after the Balfour Declaration and during the the partition plan and all this, they created delegations. They sent delegation to international committees and international committees. They participated in meetings. But then after the Nakba, and we waited until the PLO, they adopted Fatah basically, and the PLO adopted the armed resistance. But then moving to have also popular resistance, which it's people in the West like to call it nonviolent resistance, to use this term, but Palestinians like to use the term of popular resistance, which is indicating for the first, mainly to the first Intifada. But then using also that people in the PA, some of them, they say that they are resisting through negotiation, for example. This is what they are saying. So, and then we have back armed resistance that Hamas was applying. So there is different forms of resistance, and I think that Palestinians used all these forms, and of course we are speaking now about legal resistance and BDS resistance, which is economic resistance. So we've been there. This became kind of a lifestyle of the Palestinian people, that you practice your resistance. But then, as I said, it's different from the place. The form is different. The form of resistance that you adopt it's different from place to place, and it's according to the oppression that is applied on you or imposed on you by Israel and by other places. I hope that I was kind of clear in this matter.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Begüm, I'd like to. Oh, where am I? Begum, I'd like to hear anything you might want to say about how there are concentric circles of resistance, as as it were, where there's local repression of sorts, which can be varied, and across the Middle East, it's actually quite varied, even though people speak about the Middle East in one breath. But the closer you look, and you don't have to look very close, there are very different levels of repression at different and different layers within the Middle East. And then there's the external policies of very powerful countries, not least the most powerful country on earth, which is the United States. And sometimes one has to go back and forth. Iranians are living this today, or many Iranians, where they might wish for a better regime locally, but there are definitely at least many, because some, I'm not going to even talk about, but a particular minority that actually does not mind the external threats and actual bombing of Iran at some level. So we live in a situation where there's always back and forth, and I know that people in Turkey also have that positionality. Anything? Would you like to say anything on this topic?
Yes, I can say this. uh, well, trajectories of resistance. I think, as you mentioned, there is a multi-layered form of oppression in the world. I want to speak more generally, not only the oppressions that we see in the Middle East, but I think any kinds of oppression has multi-layered nature. So both, of course, the local actors play a role, but in most of the time, the external actors, as you said, maybe US and the other countries, uh, function, as a tool in empowering the conflicts in some regions, because I think some countries and also even some governmental organizations, I think, sometimes benefit from such sufferings. Unfortunately, this will be a very maybe black picture that I'm drawing at the moment, but I believe that it's not very easy to fight such oppression with tools like citizen journalism or some of the resistance techniques that Nijmeh has mentioned earlier. So this multi-layered form of oppression can only be managed with a broader coalition, including world governments, including the strong states, as you said, the USA, also the UN veto, the members of the UN Security Council who hold a veto vote, Russia, China, US, and also locally, the empowerment of the communities, local communities, and they are elected, sometimes not elected, but they are the so-called leaders of these countries, also should be taken under consideration while dealing with the issue of how to solve such multi-layered uh, trajectories of oppression. So I can summarize my words like this. A broad coalition is needed, including states, non-government actors, governmental organizations, including UN. But I don't think that UN is a strong organization. It just watches the sufferings all around the world, giving some speeches or making some summits, but they are not useful. Maybe celebrities, the people on world stage, including the tech leaders, including Elon Musk or other people. Maybe they can, of course, they can play a role if they want to solve such issues. Offering technical aid or financial resources. Because I don't think that only one country or one organization or even the US cannot solve it's on its own. So on its own, we need a diverse coalition.
Um,
Did you want to say
maybe I
something,
would.
Najmi?
Yeah, maybe I would like to, like, in this matter, to say that we are witnessing, like, the forming or the establishing of, like, we can say it, we can name it the coalition, like the coalition of all oppressed people in the world, like, or coalition of people from they are not in the center, not in Europe, they are not in the West. It's like when we speak about, for example, South Africa, and the debate around South Africa when South Africa initiated to go to the international court. Um, so there is a kind of debate today, at least among activists, that we are witnessing a new coalitions in this world that can speak and can challenge what has been can challenge the the institution, the international institution that has been created after the Second War. So and at that point, I'm gonna just when I see the people, like the countries who joined the South Africa case, we can see, like, also Nicaragua speaking, all these countries that has been that went through colonialism, and they can practice their independent independent power. So I think that we are witnessing this. It's not a very powerful coalition, actually, but it's a very important coalition that I think that in the future it will have an impact. I'm, I just, like, I teach one of my students. He's German, and then he's doing his master degree in public policy. And one of the questions, and he's not pro-Palestinian, and he's not. He's just very keen to finish his studies. And then he asked me, so what's the point of studying masters, in public policy, when I see that international organizations, this big international organization, UN organization, cannot change anything in the world. So what's the point of even studying these kind of topics? So I think that we are witnessing this debate, and it's very important debate in terms of the two things: the coalition that it's for, it's the formulation of this coalition, and then the impact of this on the debate, on even the personal level.
No, I'm looking at the time, and we had promised you an hour to 75 minutes, and we're running to the 75-minute mark. I am hesitant to ask more questions, but I will embed a question in my request of you to share with us any closing words you have. And you could address anything you'd like, especially about the future of citizen journalism and the future of resistance in general, as you have been researching it. But as you do that, feel free to address the importance of having different forms of resistance. We are now witnessing a genocide in Gaza, to which there is armed resistance within Gaza. And of course, there's armed resistance in Lebanon to the horrific bombing of Lebanon, which hasn't started after October 7th. The US, and with the support of the US, Israel has been bombing Lebanon and Syria nonstop for the past few decades, depending on the particular context. This has been going on. They have been violating Lebanese airspace and Syrian airspace, and now, of course, there's all sorts of direct confrontations and mostly bombing from the air. And the form of resistance that we see is armed resistance. But in the interim, between these we can't say moments anymore because they're not just a few days anymore or a month like the 2006 war or the days that Israel had invaded Gaza again and again to mow the lawn, 2008, 9, 12, 14, 21, and 18. So now it's a year. What other forms of resistance, do you feel are significant in addition to what you have been discussing about citizen journalism and such? If you can just incorporate in your closing words anything you'd like to share about the importance of understanding resistance as multifaceted, that would be great. And you can also skip it if you have other things to share. So I'll give you the floor for a few minutes each, and then unfortunately we will conclude. I'll start with Begüm.
Thanks for asking this question. As I think you also answered the many aspects of your question. This is not a one-dimensional issue. There are multiple trajectories of resistance, and citizen journalism can play a key, not a key role. I'm not going to say a key role, but citizen journalism can play an important role in raising awareness all over the world. I think it's also it has attracted a wide range of attention from all over the world, but it is not enough to put an end to the war, because the world leaders, as you said, including the US leaders and international organizations, despite seeming very weak, can play a role in ending such violent conflicts. So these are my final words. I want to thank once again to you and to for hosting for moderating our session with Nijmeh, and I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to talk about my research and about this really important topic today. Thank you. These are my last words, final words.
Thank you, Begum. We would love to continue this conversation, perhaps under different circumstances. Thank you so much for joining us and for your illumination of various aspects of citizen journalism in Turkey and beyond. You came to us from Istanbul, and we are very grateful to that. And it's also getting, well, not so late. I'm assuming it's 8:15 where you're at.
Yes.
Somebody
Yes.
just texted me because we're doing another event later from Gaza, and apparently the clock changed in some places, right? But not in not in Turkey.
No, it's 8:15 here
So
p.m.
in Palestine, it has changed.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's, in Palestine it has changed. Yeah.
Okay, طيب. Nijmeh, your take on the questions of forms of resistance, or any closing words you might have for us.
You know, for your question, Bassam, there is kind of, it's not just like the Palestinians and the Palestinians in Israel and Palestine in general are like, you know, standing in this juncture that, you know, suddenly they are in the middle of, like, you know, they are witnessing genocide and there is no tools to stop it, okay, to stop it or to make it, you know, just even to reach to this ceasefire. But I would like to say now, from a very academic perspective, that armed resistance has been, like, you know, has been criminalized for many years through lots of, you know, academy has a good role in it. Academy and like, you know, a lot of institutions, they, like, you know, they wave the you know, on their flags the peace and conflict studies. So we should also remember this, that armed resistance has been criminalized for many years. And actually, it's very, you know, when it comes today, that this is why there is a lot of groups in different places. They call themselves critical, like, you know, critical studies for terrorism. And they just, like, you know, they speak about the difference between state terrorism and armed resistance, for example. So I think that we are in this stage that, you know, reminding ourselves that, according to the international law, different forms of resistance, including armed resistance, is accepted when you are facing when you face kind of occupation. And so this is something that it's written, but in fact we know the story of what's going on with armed resistance. So I think it's a job that we need also, it's a work that we need to do in terms of speaking about violence and armed resistance, and in a very critical way. This is what I have to say in this stage, but if you think that we can speak more about it, I'm more than happy to speak.
No, this is actually great. Thank you. I mean, this is a topic that will not end.
Yeah.
Not only because the repression will not end in general, but repression in the locales we're addressing will not end. Certainly not in Palestine, as we are gearing up to hopefully I can't say an end to the genocide, because even in the absence of this mass killing at the tune of 50 to 200 a day, even if it stops the actual dimension of genocide, of removing people, displacing them, dispossessing them, killing their fields, their agriculture, controlling their water, electricity, and fuel, this is genocide in slow motion, and it has been happening for decades. So the topic of resistance will stay with us. And even if the intensity of the killing subsides in the coming months, which we hope it would in all cases, and we will be revisiting. And the importance of this topic is not just objective and generic. The importance of this topic is so crucial because those watching from abroad, not least the United States, see resistance as violence. And they don't even see non-violent resistance. So you can't win when they criticize the absence of non-violence. They're doing this from a perspective of ignorance because they haven't noted the non-violent resistance which we have seen in all countries in the region: Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Turkey, and Iran and beyond. And it goes unnoticed, especially because the mainstream media doesn't report much on it. Even when it does, like in the march that took place in Palestine in a few years ago, where people were actually gunned down and killed while they were protesting peacefully. There's some sort of amnesia or blind spot towards these events. And when people resist, basically using armed resistance, it's considered the first act, not a response to decades of structural and deadly repression. So the topic will stay with us, and thanks for illuminating so many aspects of it. We hope to have you back soon. Actually, I keep saying I hope we don't have you back soon, because this means that problems are solved. But I don't think that's going to ever happen. Hopefully, it will be less of a problem, and we will speak with you in the future. Thanks, Begüm and Nijmeh. You are the Global Academy scholars with MESA, and you have illuminated us, and you are doing a remarkable sort of research and work, and I hope that we continue speaking with you. We will have the detailed bios and your information on Jadaliyya in case people would like to learn more about your work. And let me just say, let me remind folks 1 second of the Gaza Scholars event we had last week, which was also co-sponsored by the Global Academy, the MESA Global Academy. Here it is. This is the event that we had last Wednesday, Sustaining Higher Education in Gaza, with 6 Global Academy scholars. And you can find all of this material at PalestineInContext.org. I've said this URL so many times. it doesn't even register in my mind. We've had Dr. Ahmed Abu Shaban, Wissam Amir, Yusuf Al Gharbawi, Muhammad Hamdouna, Osama Hamdouna, and Mohab Sawali, who is actually texting us and writing us as we speak right now. Ahlan, both Muhammad and others who are commenting. Thank you both so much, and have a wonderful time and stay safe.
Stay safe in the US.
I know it's the next most dangerous place now, besides Israel and Germany, because it's I have no idea what's happening in Germany, but it's pretty intense. Okay, I'm going to close with a quick video of the teaching module that is based on conversations like these that we've had in the past year. The teaching module can be found on palestiniancontext.org, and it basically curates segments from different teachings and puts them on the website for various purposes, including assigning material in classrooms or just basic research for anybody wishing to learn more about the region. In the meantime, I will say goodbye to you.
Thank you. Salam.